Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notification.
It was 12:27 in the morning, on December 25th, when Elias Thorne decided his marriage was a fraud. He did not come to this conclusion through a screaming match, or the discovery of a hotel receipt in a coat pocket. There was no lipstick on a collar. No scent of cheap perfume. None of the cinematic clichés that television dramas rely upon to signal the end of a domestic union. Instead, the realization arrived in a moment of terrifying, suffocating banality. It happened amidst the smell of roasted duck, pine needles, and the cloying sweetness of mulled wine. The Thorne residence was full. Elias, a logistics manager for a national shipping firm, had spent the last week ensuring the house was an operational masterpiece. The garlands were symmetrical. The heating was adjusted to an optimal 68 degrees. The wine glasses were polished to a streak-free clarity. Elias prided himself on control. He believed that if the environment was orderly, the life lived within it would follow suit. Vivian, his wife of 8 years, stood near the fireplace. At 36, she possessed a fluid, easy charm that Elias often envied, but could never replicate. Tonight, she was playing the role of the perfect hostess, her laugh chiming in perfect intervals with the jokes told by Elias's father. The glitch happened during the toast. The family had gathered in the living room, a circle of 15 people, holding crystal flutes. Elias stood by the piano, observing. He liked to observe. It was a habit from his profession, tracking the flow of goods, identifying bottlenecks, ensuring efficiency. He scanned the room, cataloging the guests. There were his parents, solid and predictable. His sister, Sarah, wrangling her 2 toddlers. And then, there was Silas. Silas was a distant cousin on Elias's mother's side. He was 35. A man who owned a struggling, but trendy bistro downtown. Silas was everything Elias was not. Disheveled in a way that looked curated. Financially unstable. And loud. He only appeared at major holidays, usually smelling of clove cigarettes and brandy. He and Elias had nothing in common. They exchanged stiff handshakes and moved to opposite corners of the room. To another year of health and prosperity, Elias's father announced, raising his glass. To family, the room chorused. Elias watched Vivian. She was standing next to an empty armchair. And Silas was standing just behind it, to her left. As the chorus of voices rose, they turned toward each other to clink glasses. It should have been nothing, but Elias saw the micro-expression, as their glasses touched, to a sharp, clear chime. Vivian did not look at Silas's eyes, nor did she look at his glass. She looked at his hand. Her gaze dropped to his fingers wrapped around the stem of the flute, lingered there for a fraction of a second. And then, she looked away with a speed that was physically jarring. It was a mechanical snap of the neck. A violent correction of focus. She looked immediately at Elias across the room. Her eyes were wide, the pupils dilated. She smiled, but the smile did not reach the corners of her eyes. It was a shield. Elias felt a cold, hard stone settle in his stomach. He knew that look. It was the look of someone who had almost stepped off a ledge, and pulled back at the last second. It was the look of guilt. He did not make a scene. He took a sip of his wine, which suddenly tasted like vinegar. He continued to play the host, collecting empty plates, refilling drinks, discussing the fluctuating price of fuel with his uncle. But the internal recording had started. The forensic audit of his marriage had begun. 40 minutes later, the party was winding down. The toddlers were asleep on the sofa. The older relatives were putting on coats. Elias saw an opportunity to test his hypothesis. He needed data. Vivian, Elias called out. His voice sounded normal to his own ears, though he felt like he was speaking underwater. Grab Silas. Let's get a picture. We haven't had one with that side of the family in years. It was a trap, disguised as a casual request. Vivian was clearing dessert forks from the coffee table. Her back was to him. At the mention of the name Silas, her shoulders tensed. It was subtle, a locking of the trapezius muscles. But Elias saw it. She turned around. Oh, I don't know, Elias. Everyone is tired. My hair is a mess. It's just a photo, Elias said. Stepping closer. Holding up his phone. Come on. Silas. Get in here. Silas, who had been laughing at a joke by the doorway, looked over. Sure. Why not? He walked over, carrying the loose, easy confidence of a man who didn't have to worry about mortgages or retirement funds. Vivian froze. She stood next to the mantel. Silas moved to stand beside her. Squeeze in, Elias commanded. Unlocking his camera. Vivian took a step toward Silas. But she kept a rigid 6 inches of space between them. Her body was angled away from him. Her hands clasped tightly in front of her waist. It was the posture of a Victorian schoolgirl forced to stand near a contagious patient. Closer, Elias said. You two look like strangers. Vivian forced a laugh. It was a brittle sound. Like dry leaves being stepped on. She stepped closer. As she did, Silas shifted his weight. And his arm brushed against hers. The reaction was instantaneous. Vivian flinched. It was a small, electric jerk of her arm. In her distraction, her hand bumped the wine glass sitting on the mantel. The glass tipped. Red wine splashed onto the white carpet. Damn it! Vivian cried out. The profanity was sharp. Too loud for the room. She dropped to her knees instantly. Grabbing a napkin. Scrubbing at the stain with a frantic, manic energy. I'm so clumsy. I'm so sorry. God. I'm so stupid. Her face was flushed a deep crimson that had nothing to do with the heat of the room. She wasn't looking at the stain. She was looking at the floor. Breathing hard. Her hands shaking as she scrubbed. It's fine. Viv, Silas said. Reaching down to help. Don't, she snapped. Pulling her hand back. The room went silent. She realized her tone and looked up. Her eyes wet. I mean. Don't worry about it, Silas. I've got it. Just. Go enjoy your drink. Elias lowered his phone. He didn't take the picture. He didn't need to. The data point had been collected. The flinch. The panic. The desperate need to create a distraction. That night. Lying in bed. Elias listened to Vivian breathing beside him. She was feigning sleep. He could tell by the rhythm. It was too even. Too controlled. He stared at the ceiling. Replaying the last 12 years in his mind. Looking for the cracks he had missed. He realized. With a sinking sensation. That he wasn't looking for proof of whether it happened. He was looking for proof of how long he had been a fool. December 26th was a day of gray skies and leftovers. The house felt hungover. Vivian spent the day on the sofa, claiming a migraine. She wrapped herself in a blanket, creating a cocoon that Elias was implicitly forbidden to enter. I just need to rest, she said. Shielding her eyes from the winter light, the hosting took it out of me. Of course, Elias said. Rest. He went to his study. He told her he had year-end reports to review for the logistics firm. In reality, he was opening an investigation. Elias was a man who believed in digital footprints. In his line of work. If a truck deviated from its route by 5 miles, there was a record. If a package was delayed, there was a timestamp. People were no different. They left trails. He sat before his computer. His hands cold. He picked up his phone. He and Vivian shared a family plan. And with it, a location sharing feature. They had installed it 3 years ago. Ostensibly for safety. To know if the other was stuck in snow, or had a flat tire. Elias rarely checked it, he trusted Vivian. Or rather, he had trusted the predictability of her routine. He opened the app. The map loaded. A grid of the city. He clicked on. History. Elias didn't know what he expected to find. Maybe a hotel near the airport. Maybe Silas's apartment. He scrolled back. Through the last 30 days. Most of the data was innocuous. The blue dot that represented Vivian moved from their suburban home. To her office. To client sites. To the grocery store. To the yoga studio. It was the boring, rhythmic map of a suburban wife. But Elias was thorough. He looked for deviations. December 12th. A Tuesday. Vivian's calendar. Which synced to the family cloud. Said, client lunch. Dr. Henderson. West Side. The GPS data told a different story. At 12:15, the blue dot had traveled not to the West Side Medical Complex, but to the warehouse district on the east side of the river. It hovered there for an hour and 40 minutes. Elias zoomed in. The dot was stationary on a block of renovated industrial buildings. Old brick. High ceilings. Mixed-use zoning. He checked December 5th. Dental appointment. The blue dot was in the warehouse district again. 2 hours. November 28th. Late inventory meeting. Warehouse district. 3 hours. 5 times in the last month. Always during the day. Always when she had a plausible alibi involving work or errands. Elias felt a phantom pressure in his chest. A tightening of the ribs. He opened a browser tab and typed in the address corresponding to the blue dot. 402. East River Road. It wasn't a hotel. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a residential loft building. He searched the building's registry. It was blocked by an LLC. But Elias kept digging. He cross-referenced the address with Silas's name. Nothing. Silas lived in a chaotic apartment above his bistro, 3 miles away. Then, he remembered something Silas had mentioned 2 Christmases ago. A brag about a wealthy friend. A silent investor in the bistro, who traveled to Europe for the winter, and asked Silas to keep an eye on his loft. A safe house. Elias sat back in his ergonomic chair. The silence in the study was deafening. He looked at the map again. The blue dot blinking on the screen felt like an infection. He wasn't angry yet. Anger was a hot emotion. Chaotic and messy. Elias felt something closer to nausea. Mixed with a freezing clarity. He was looking at the logistics of betrayal. The planning involved. The drive across town took 20 minutes. The parking. The entry codes. The time spent there. Then the drive back. The composing of the face. The fixing of the hair. The lie prepared for when she walked through the door. How was the dentist, honey? Fine. Just a cleaning. My gums are a little sensitive. He remembered that conversation. He remembered kissing her cheek. He remembered the faint, metallic taste of something on her skin that he had assumed was mouthwash. Now, his mind supplied a different origin for that scent. He looked at the timestamps again. The last visit was on December 23rd. 2 days before Christmas. While Elias was brining the duck and ironing the tablecloths, Vivian had been in a loft in the warehouse district, likely in bed with his cousin. He closed the laptop. He walked to the window and looked out at the snow-covered lawn. It was pristine, white, and perfect. Just like his marriage. And just like his marriage, the dirt was simply buried underneath, waiting for the thaw. The confrontation did not happen immediately. Elias waited 24 hours. He needed the bile to settle. He needed to be precise. On the morning of December 27th, Elias woke up early. He made coffee. He sat at the kitchen island. The granite cold under his forearms. He placed his phone on the counter, face up. The screen dark. He heard the shower turn off upstairs. He heard the hairdryer. He visualized Vivian's routine. The lotions. The serums. The construction of the face she showed the world. When she came downstairs, she was dressed in a beige cashmere sweater and jeans. She looked rested. The migraine excuse had expired. Morning, she said. Heading for the coffee pot. Is there any left? Reviewing the logs, Elias said. Vivian paused. The mug halfway to her lips. What? The logs, Elias repeated. He didn't look at her. He looked at his coffee cup. In logistics, when inventory goes missing, we check the logs. We check the GPS. We see where the driver went off the route. Vivian turned slowly. Her face was neutral, but her hands were gripping the mug tightly. Elias. What are you talking about? It's too early for work talk. Elias picked up his phone. He tapped the screen. Unlocking it. He opened the map. Already zoomed into the warehouse district. He slid the phone across the granite island. It spun slowly, and came to a stop in front of her. 402. East River Road, Elias said. You've been there 5 times in the last 30 days. December 12th. December 5th. November 28th. Do you want the timestamps? Or is the location enough? Vivian looked down. She didn't touch the phone. She stared at the blue dot as if it were a spider. She started. Then stopped. She licked her lips. I was looking at properties. For the agency. We're thinking of expanding. You sell pharmaceuticals, Vivian. You don't buy real estate. And even if you did, you wouldn't go to the same residential loft 5 times during hours you claimed to be at the dentist. Elias watched her face crumble. It wasn't a sudden break. It was a slow erosion. The confident professional vanished. The loving wife evaporated. What was left was a cornered animal. It's not what you think, she whispered. The universal anthem of the guilty. It is exactly what I think, Elias said. His voice flat. Void of inflection. It's Silas. At the sound of the name, Vivian flinched again. Just like she had at the party. That flinch was his confirmation. It's not. We didn't. She stammered. Tears beginning to pool in her eyes. Elias, please. It was just talking. At first, Elias repeated. And then? He was going through a hard time. With the bistro. He needed someone to listen. I was trying to help family. You helped family by sleeping with him in a borrowed loft? I was lonely. She shouted suddenly. The defense turning into an offense. She slammed her mug down. Coffee sloshing onto the counter. You're always working, Elias. You're always auditing something. The house. The budget. The schedule. I feel like an employee here. Silas listened to me. He made me feel like a person, not a project manager. Elias didn't blink. He didn't shout back. He felt a profound sense of detachment. Her accusation might have had merit in a therapy session. But here, in the face of deceit, it was irrelevant. So, Elias said. Because I like a clean house. You let my cousin take you to bed. Is that the equation? Vivian buried her face in her hands and began to sob. It was a jagged, ugly sound. It was a mistake. It just happened. We stopped. I swear, Elias. We stopped. That's why I was so weird at Christmas. I ended it on the 23rd. I told him I couldn't do it to you. The 23rd, Elias mused. 2 days ago. You ended it 2 days ago. Yes. It's over. It meant nothing. It meant you lied to me every day for a month. It meant you looked me in the eye, kissed me, and then went to him. Elias stood up. He felt too tall for the room. The logistics of it, Vivian. That's what I can't get past. The driving. The parking. The codes. The planning. You didn't slip and fall onto him. You planned every single minute of it. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving her sobbing over the map of her own infidelity. They did not separate immediately. That would have been too easy. Too clean. For the next 7 days, they lived in the same house. Trapped in a purgatory of Elias's making. Elias moved into the guest bedroom. He stopped speaking to her about anything other than essential household maintenance. The trash goes out on Tuesday. The heating bill came. He watched her. He watched her try to perform penance. She cooked elaborate meals that he refused to eat. She cleaned the house with a fervor that matched his own. Trying to speak his language. She left pamphlets for marriage counseling on the kitchen table. Elias read them. And threw them in the recycling bin. The house became a torture chamber of details. Every time Vivian looked at her phone, Elias asked. Is that him? No, she would whisper. I blocked him. Elias, please. Show me, he would say. And she would hand over her phone. Her hands shaking. Submitting to the audit. Elias would scroll through her messages. Her call logs. Her deleted folder. He knew he was being cruel. He knew this was abusive in its own quiet, administrative way. But he couldn't stop. He needed to know the extent of the rot. He began to ask questions. Specific. Granular questions that tore at the scabs. Did you talk about me? He asked one evening. Over a dinner of silence. Vivian looked down at her plate. No. Don't lie. The data suggests you did. You said you were lonely. You must have complained about me. What did you say? Did you tell him I was boring? Did you tell him I was cold? I said you were distant. And did he agree? Did Silas? The man who can't keep a restaurant open for more than 2 years, agree that I was the problem? Elias, stop. Please. Did you take showers there? He asked. Relentlessly. After. Did you shower there so you wouldn't smell like him when you came home? Yes, she whispered. A single tear tracking down her nose. God, yes. I'm sorry. Elias nodded, satisfying some dark hunger inside him. Efficient. I appreciate the efficiency. He wasn't sleeping. He was consumed by the image of them. The contrast between his orderly life and Silas's chaotic, sensual world. He realized that Vivian hadn't just sought comfort. She had sought chaos. She wanted the mess. And that was something Elias could never give her. He realized then that the marriage wasn't just broken. It was obsolete. The contract had been voided. On January 4th, Elias placed a folder on the kitchen table. What is this? Vivian asked. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her face gaunt. She had lost 5 pounds in a week. Separation agreement, Elias said. I had my lawyer draw it up. It's a draft. But the terms are fair. 50-50 on the assets. You keep the car. I keep the house until we sell it. Vivian stared at the folder. You're not even going to try? Elias. 12 years. We can fix this. People come back from this. I don't, Elias said. I don't come back from this. I can't look at you, Vivian. When I look at you, I see a calendar of lies. I see the warehouse district. I made a mistake. You made a series of choices. Hundreds of choices. Every mile you drove to him was a choice. The liquidation of the marriage was swift. Elias treated it like a failing division of his company. He cut losses. He expedited the paperwork. Then came the social notification. Elias didn't make a public announcement. He didn't post on social media. He simply called his mother. Vivian and I are separating, he told her. Oh, Elias. Why? What happened? You should ask Silas, he said. And hung up. It was a nuclear strike delivered with a whisper. Within hours, the family network was buzzing. The information traveled faster than light. Silas was effectively excommunicated. He was uninvited from the upcoming Easter gathering. His mother called him screaming. The shame was absolute. Vivian moved out 3 days later. She packed her boxes while Elias sat in his study, working. He didn't help her carry them to the moving truck. He listened to the sound of her footsteps. The tape of the boxes being sealed. The front door opening. And closing. When she came to the study door to say goodbye. She looked small. I loved you, Elias, she said. I really did. I got lost. Elias looked at her over the top of his glasses. Goodbye, Vivian. She waited for more. She waited for anger. Or forgiveness. Or emotion. He gave her nothing. He returned his gaze to his screen. She left. The door clicked shut. Elias sat in the silence. It was perfect. Heavy. And crushing. He was alone in his orderly house. The king of a dead kingdom. 3 months later. April. Elias sat on the balcony of a new apartment. He had sold the house. It had too many ghosts. Too many corners where he imagined Vivian hiding secrets. The new place was modern. Minimalist. Located in a high-rise downtown. It was sterile and clean. He was drinking black coffee. The wind off the lake was brisk. He was going to the gym 5 days a week. He was working longer hours. He had dated a woman from accounting once. A stiff dinner that ended with a handshake. He wasn't ready. He wasn't sure he would ever be ready to hand over the keys to his life again. He picked up his phone to check the weather. As he swiped, he opened his photo gallery. He scrolled up. Past the photos of the new apartment. Past the photos of receipts for tax purposes. He found the photo from Christmas. The one he never took. Or, rather, the one he took right after. He had lied to himself. He hadn't taken a picture of them posing. He had taken a picture of the floor. He opened it. It was a blurry image of the white carpet, stained with a splatter of red wine. In the corner of the frame, you could see Vivian's blurred hand reaching down, and the tip of Silas's shoe. It was an ugly photo. A picture of a mess. Elias looked at it for a long time. He remembered the smell of the turkey, he remembered the sound of the glass breaking. He remembered the naivety of the man who stood there holding the phone, thinking his biggest problem was a wine stain. He realized that he had been boring. He admitted that to himself now. He had been cold. He had prioritized the container over the contents of his life. But he also knew that he had been loyal. And in his ledger, loyalty was a currency that could not be devalued. Vivian had tried to email him last week. "I miss you," the subject line read. He hadn't opened it. He had simply moved it to the trash folder. He looked at the photo of the wine stain one last time. It was the only evidence left of the crime scene. Elias pressed. Delete. Delete from all devices? The phone asked. Yes. The screen went black for a second. Then refreshed. The image was gone. Elias put the phone down on the metal table. He took a sip of his coffee. The city spread out below him. A grid of lights and traffic. Moving in predictable, logical patterns. He took a deep breath of the cold air. He was alone. He was damaged. He was cynical. But his accounts were balanced. And for Elias Thorne, that had to be enough. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.